I live alone with my very protective dog, so it came as a surprise when he was acting playful to the knocking coming from the attic. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first ever episode of this season of Sow-win, a new Halloween mini podcast about ghost stories and about the old stories of some of our Irish ancestors. Some of these stories are not meant to be scary, and in fact, you might find some of the Irish tales to be a bit humorous. So let's get this started. I don't know about you, but I personally love October. I think about the warm colors of the season, the oranges, yellows, and reds in contrast to the dark, scary colors of Halloween, the blacks, purples, and the greens. Of course, I could be a little bit biased, since my birthday is in October. But nevertheless, it's an amazing time for cheap scares and for tons of candy. Now, I'm not the kind of person to watch scary movies or go through haunted corn mazes, but I do love the idea of horror movies and of horror games. Some of my favorite scary encounters are that of ghosts and other hauntings. So it's a fair assumption that we all know what ghosts are. And in Irish legend, a ghost is just that. They're the trapped souls of people that couldn't move on to the next life. Something, someone, or some unfulfilled duty is keeping them here, unable to move on. In the old Irish days, people would give threats of haunting someone should they die. Also, should a person despair over another's death, friends and family would warn them to stop crying. You are keeping them from resting, or say, you are waking the dog that watches to devour the souls of the dead. According to Irish legend, when the soul leaves the body, it is drawn away. Sometimes they are drawn toward either fairies or evil spirits. The souls of children are particularly vulnerable. Souls can also take the shape of animals, even insects. Butterflies are the most common. So, should you see a butterfly near a corpse, know that their soul has moved on into eternal happiness. However, it is best not to disturb spirits, unless you really have to. Of course, accidents can occur. Our first story takes place back when there was no such thing as indoor plumbing. Back then, people would have to throw out excess water or waste in buckets out onto the street. It was a common practice to shout out, "Take care of the water," which literally translates to, "Away with yourself from the water." It is said that the spirits of the recently departed would wander about the streets, and it would be dangerous should the water fall on them. So one night, a woman threw out a bucket of boiling water without giving fair warning. A scream from a person was heard from below, but no one was seen. The next day, a black lamb entered the home. Its back looked as if it were scalded. It laid there, moaning by the fire, then died. They all knew this was the spirit from the night before, and they carried the dead lamb out and buried it deep into the ground. However, every night at the same time, it walked back into the house. It came in scalded as before, sat by the fire, moaned, and then died. This continued for many nights until a priest was sent for. Through an exorcism, the spirit was finally laid to rest. The black lamb no longer showed up, neither in the house nor in the grave. Personally, I have never seen any ghosts. I have only ever seen shadows moving in the corner of my eyes, or heard noises come from another part of the house while I was alone. Now this next story is about a guy that had an interesting encounter with a haunt at a hotel. When I was younger, I was on vacation with my family, and we stayed at this really nice hotel. We stayed on the 3rd floor, room 306. We got settled in, and we fell asleep. Nothing happened that night, but if anything did, I wasn't awake for it. The next night, however, I was suddenly jolted awake to the screams of a woman in the room next to ours. My parents also woke up to the screaming, and we all looked at each other dazedly, wondering what was going on. We came to our senses, and my dad called the receptionist. He told the person on the phone that some woman was screaming bloody murder in the room next to us, and if they could send security up. I followed my dad out into the hall to go next door. A couple of the other residents were also poking their heads out trying to find out what was going on. The elevator came up, and the security guy came out. He pushed everyone back away from the room 307. He yelled into the door that he was going to open it and to stop screaming. He dropped the key card into the door and it unlocked. He opened the door, and immediately the screaming stopped. No wind down, no crying, or heavy breathing. Just silence. As soon as the guy opened the door though, I felt a cold chill go through me, like as if someone or something passed right by me. People were starting to crowd as the man walked in, and people started gasping or saying, "What the?" With people in the way, I wasn't able to get a good look at the room. From what I could tell, the room was supposed to be similar to our room, except the furniture was thrown about everywhere. I could hear the bathtub faucet going and see that it was overflowing and spilling out onto the floor. My dad and I went back into our room at that point, and I wasn't able to see much else. That morning, my parents had moved us to another floor for the remainder of that trip. I don't know if the screaming continued or not. I would find out later that there was a murder in that room years ago. A woman murdered her cheating husband and his mistress in that room before killing herself. She found out he was staying there and she surprised him. She immediately slit his throat and pushed him onto one of the beds, then went for the woman and did the same. Both of the victims' bodies were spread across the beds and their blood stained the white sheets. The screaming woman went to the bathtub and let it run as she slit her own wrists open. That hotel no longer lets any patrons use that room or use any of the surrounding rooms. The screams are unsettling to most, if not all, the guests. The few people who did stay in that room reported feeling a malevolent presence there. The bathtub water would randomly turn on, and whenever they would leave the room for more than an hour, they would come back to find the furniture rearranged. Sometimes when a person would lie down onto the bed, they would start to feel like they couldn't breathe. They would try to breathe, but nothing would happen. The screaming would start around midnight, and some even saw a woman standing over them as they slept. Thankfully, I was only next door, and I only caught a glimpse of what that thing could do. Thank you so much for listening to the start of this season of Sow-win podcast. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you know when something new comes out. Come back tomorrow for a new episode of the season of Sow-win. Good night, everyone. And remember, keep that fire burning.